So it is Tuesday, and on a Tuesday, we usually take a look at some of the news items that have come about in the Ontario Hockey League. And I noticed this one, especially over the weekend, just the attention it got. It involved London Knights forward Sawyer Boulton. He has been suspended yet again. He's been suspended indefinitely at the point of recording, and it follows an incident that happened Friday night against the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. So let's break down what transpired. Boulton, he went after Matthew Virgilio with less than 5 minutes left in the game, where London was down by a score of 8-2. Boulton, he did take a cross check from Virgilio and then went after him. And there was some pushing and shoving as the play left the zone, and then the gloves were dropped. So Boulton handed an instigator penalty on the play, which does come with an automatic 2-game suspension when it's in the final 5 minutes of the hockey game. And since he's a repeat offender, his suspension is listed as indefinitely. So Boulton, of course, has a reputation. So let's look at the suspensions he's had already this season. He was previously suspended 10 games for a hit to the head on Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds forward Bryce McConnell Barker. That happened in December. And then he also was handed a 3-game suspension for a staged fight, and that was against Owen Sound's Jackson Stewart. That one I had some questions about, but still, the league, he's put him on notice. He had that 3-game suspension first for the stage fight, then the check to the head against McConnell Barker, and now the instigator situation against Virgilio. Boulton, he is an old school type of player. He's got that physical side, that intimidating factor that he brings, which the London Knights have kind of been using a little more this season than what we've seen in the past. So for Boulton, he's got 2 goals, 2 assists so far in 32 games this season. But it doesn't really seem like his play is hurting the London Knights. They had that 23-game point streak, which of course was snapped in the game against the Greyhounds Friday night. But you have to consider him a bit of a liability when the playoffs roll around, because do you really want to have a player that's going to be taking penalties like this? Like if he's going to drop the gloves for an instigator and then you're going to give a power play to the other team. I know this situation happened at the end of the game when the Greyhounds were already up by 6 goals, but you still have to factor that in. Do you want to have him out there putting your team into shorthanded situations? I know the London Knights this year, the top team when it comes to the penalty kill. Denver Barkey's been sensational as shorthanded goals. Even Easton Cowan's been getting in on the action. So obviously, this is a London Knights team that can burn you in many different ways, and they like to intimidate the opposition, and that's what Bolton's been doing. But also looking at the situation from another angle, Virgilio, he's not a fighter. Only 29 penalty minutes so far this season, and this was just his second fighting major in his OHL career, and that's over 2 seasons. So we'll have to wait and see what the league does in regards to Boulton. It's when it is a repeat offender, they do typically get the suspensions become larger and larger. We could be looking at a suspension where it's for the rest of the season from one report I was reading. I don't know if that's likely, but if the league might be considering it. So we'll have to wait and see. So that's the latest on Sawyer Boulton. If there's any more updates about his suspension, I'll definitely put another news video. This also came across my attention. The Sudbury Wolves broadcast has changed. Wolves fans may have noticed something a little different over the weekend. Sudbury, they were in Kitchener and Guelph, and the road broadcast was not there. The radio broadcast came to an end. The Wolves organization has decided to suspend road broadcasts indefinitely. There's been no reasons given, but it's kind of strange, especially at this point in the season. This is something you usually hear about during the off season or maybe early on in the regular season, but the Sudbury Wolves organization deciding to suspend the road broadcast. Now, I'll admit, I used to do the Sudbury Wolves road broadcasts when I was at a radio station up in Greater Sudbury. At that time, we only did road broadcasts. We never did the home games. It was kind of the thinking was, if you're doing the road or the home radio broadcast, rather, that's taking away from potential tickets being sold for those home games. So I know the Owen Sound Attack, they kind of have that similar situation where they don't do the home games for the radio broadcast, but just the road. But Sudbury doing a different approach. No road, but they're continuing the home radio broadcast. So we'll see what comes out. Maybe there's more details that'll come out down the road, or maybe there's some sort of switch of some kind I'm not aware of, but that's where we're at right now. But this decision puts Sudbury in some different company. Without having a road broadcast, Sudbury joins the Barrie Colts and the North Bay Battalion, who do not have away radio broadcasts. But we'll see what happens. Because I feel like I know radio people will tune in, but they want to watch the games, so they'll buy the tickets or they'll travel on the road, or they'll watch it on television or they'll stream it. That seems to be the way a lot of broadcasts are going. It's going through steep streaming. It's going through channels such as YouTube. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, especially with Sudbury wanting to make that deep run in the playoffs. You kind of want to have that vibe. You want to have that coverage, no matter what media angle it may be. If it's radio, television, print, social media, you want to have your team front and center. And that's kind of where I find it a little strange that they're announcing it now, that they're suspending the radio broadcast. But we'll have to wait and see what happens next on that front. Also, I want to talk about the Erie Otters goaltender situation. It's been tough going for Erie. They're 2-7-0-1 over their last 10 games, and they've been without Ben Gaudreau now for since the end of the first period against the Soo Greyhounds on January 21st. He left that game with a foot injury and has not been back since. Jacob Gibbons, the backup, he's also dealt with some illness, so he's been unavailable at times. Gibbons, he has appeared in 6 of the last 13 games, though, so he is getting that time in net. But because of the card situation, the Otters goalie, Charlie Burns, he can only appear in 10 games or he has to get an A card status. They've also had emergency call-ups like Ethan Frazier, Sergei Litvinov, and Bo Porosky. All have appeared in a game on an emergency basis. So when you're an emergency goaltender, you're only allowed to appear in one game. So those three have already appeared over the last 13 games. So a very fascinating situation right now developing with the Erie Otters, who are fighting for their playoff lives with 4 weeks left in the regular season. And Erie, they're really no stranger when it comes to goalie problems. In March 2012, the Otters, they didn't dress a backup goaltender due to an injury. So going into that game against the Niagara Ice Dogs, Ramis Sadikov, who was in net, ended up getting hurt. I believe it was Alex Friesen who collided with Sadikov, and Connor Crisp, who is a player, ended up going in net. He was told he was the backup goaltender for that game. He was in the stands. He wasn't on the bench. So he had to be contacted, put on Sadikov's goaltender gear, and went in net for the rest of the game, Connor Crisp. And what was also interesting, he hadn't played a game yet that season because he was coming back from an injury. So it's a very unique situation. You don't see it. Connor Crisp, he ended up wearing Sadikov's equipment. But these things, they're rare, but I would expect the OHL to maybe have a meeting this summer to talk about ways to address the goaltending situation, especially on an emergency basis like what the Erie Otters are facing with right now. So those are the news items for today. Love to see the comments down below, your thoughts on the Sawyer Boulton situation, the Wolves broadcast, or even the goaltending emergency thing that's involving the Erie Otters right now. So you can always put your comments down below. Remember to hit like and subscribe, and feel free to share these videos as this channel continues to grow. I appreciate all your support, and we'll talk to you again soon.